last year, we've been told to keep our distance from each other. Not an easy thing to do if you're single and looking for love. Now, as Israel edges back to a kind of new normal, its citizens are being vaccinated at a record pace. And what I've learned from online dating is that the vaccine is the new sexy. Getting vaccinated against COVID-19 can now improve your chances of getting a date. At least in Israel, it seems, where those looking for love are openly declaring their vaccination status so they can get their love life back on track. Shani Shoam could not remember the last time she went out on a face-to-face date. For the past year, all her meetings have been over the phone, online chats or via video calls. But now that bars and restaurants are opening again, Shani is ready to get back out on the Tel Aviv dating scene, where even ordering a drink in a real-life bar is truly refreshing.
So after more than a year that dating was very different than usual, not being able to see someone face-to-face is very exciting. It's actually, you feel that you need to teach yourself again in some ways how to run a date face-to-face.
Anyone coming here tonight to the Speakeasy rooftop bar in the centre of Tel Aviv can rest assured. That's because only those who are vaccinated can enter the bar. Launched in February, Israel's Green Pass vaccination certification system allows inoculated citizens to enter places like gyms, theatres, concerts, restaurants and bars. Speakeasy bar manager B. Levi has not noticed any difference in the way Israelis are meeting up now, post-lockdown. She says people here are comfortable with physical interactions, like hugging each other and sitting close together.
I feel like they're more hungry to go out. I feel like they're more into getting dressed, and it feels like the place is reopened. I don't feel they're really keeping distance from each other because they know that everybody here gets the vaccine.
So dating in a bar after a year of COVID, I think it's pretty weird. Like standing in front of another person and like not having this barrier that separates us, and I feel very vulnerable. And I don't know, I think it's like learning how to live again, you know?
Many Israelis are feeling safer about the coronavirus because the country leads the world with the fastest inoculation program. Over 54% of Israelis have been fully vaccinated. And because of this, the government decided back in February to reopen the economy. Even as Israelis are starting to return to their normal lives, many are still wondering how the pandemic has changed the approach to finding love. James Spiro is an Israeli journalist who analyses data coming out from dating apps.
COVID has changed online dating in that more people are reluctant to meet physically face-to-face right away. So what might used to happen is they would send a few messages and then quickly rush to the bar. What we're seeing is this kind of in the middle stage where people are maybe doing a Zoom call or they're doing a phone call and they're kind of doing a one more separate step before meeting.
The traffic of online dating sites has increased dramatically during the pandemic. Online dating network OkCupid features multiple questions to help find a potential match. Recently, they added questions related to the pandemic to users' profiles. According to their data, vaccination has become one of the biggest talking points. It's been mentioned 137% more times in user chats over the last few months, with the conclusion that in Israel, you are 13% more likely to get a match if you've been vaccinated or have the intention to be inoculated.
Women in Israel on OkCupid are almost 40% more likely to think the coronavirus immunity is a bigger turn-on than unlimited wealth compared to men. So we're really seeing a shift in what people are looking for and prioritizing in their love lives. We're actually saying that double masking, social distancing, and vaccinated is the new tall, dark, and handsome.
More and more people on these online sites are comfortable with meeting someone 2 meters apart and with or without a mask. Most of them are also putting their vaccination status in their online profile.
I would not date anyone who's unvaccinated. I prefer to keep my health. I trust the vaccines. I believe in vaccines. I believe in science. People who don't trust science are bit of weirdos to me.
No, I was not going out with anyone without a vaccination, because if he don't care enough about himself, he doesn't gonna care about me.
Jackie Pruitt lives in Tel Aviv and is an OkCupid user who was dating someone she met on the app at the start of last year. But that relationship didn't last long, so she decided to take a break during the pandemic to focus on herself. But now she's back online looking for love.
There have been guys that have asked me if I'm getting vaccinated, if I want to be vaccinated, am I vaccinated? So it's not an issue to me to say, yes, I'm vaccinated. It's almost common to people asking about your sexual health questions. I have no shame in being honest about it.
Pruitt insists she will not date someone who has not yet received the jab. Quite clearly at the moment, one of the most attractive qualities when looking for a partner in Israel is one's vaccination status. And it comes as no surprise that it's also your political views. Data from OkCupid said that 70% of people in Israel wouldn't date someone with different political views to their own. So it seems here you must have both to score a date, be vaccinated and be politically aligned. Elad Yagel is an online dating coach for men. He teaches his clients on how to communicate with someone they're interested in, as well as tips on how to plan an enjoyable date. He also now teaches his clients on how to navigate dating amid a pandemic.
Men and women meet each other in social frames. And then when the social frames collapsed, so people have found themselves in front of the computers. And then what happened, they were forced to get to know each other by those machines. Like the dating apps became the biggest middleman ever. And then a lot of them have found themselves with some kind of disability to communicate. You cannot really actually know the person on the other side by text. And even they do like the Zoom date, that's something that invented through the COVID. So a lot of times the people cannot express themselves properly.
Whether it's meeting in a bar, online or via video calls, the pandemic has changed some of the rules of dating forever. But what it hasn't changed, and never will, is the eternal human desire to find true love.
COVID-19 restrictions are gradually being lifted in the United States. Here in New York, cinemas are reopening and pop-up music performances are being planned over the next few months in places like parks and museums. But the challenge to lure back audiences and cinema goers remains following months of lockdown measures. There hasn't been a sight like this in New York for more than a year. Musician Jon Batiste gave one of the first live performances with an audience in the city since lockdown began last March. It marked the start of 300 free pop-up shows planned across the state in the next few months as part of an arts revival festival announced by the Governor Andrew Cuomo. The socially distanced shows aren't advertised in advance to stop crowds from gathering, but they're attracting big names. With joy will conquer all despair. Legendary singer-songwriter Patti Smith performed at the Brooklyn Museum, and actors Hugh Jackman and Sarah Jessica Parker are also slated to take part. Grammy-winning singer Janae Bridges swapped opera houses for a shopfront in Manhattan. She says the performances are a way of reminding people of the importance of the city's music scene.
The culture and arts in New York is really what keeps us going and alive, and not just New York, I think the world. But it was really such a wonderful feeling to be able to use my instrument, my voice, safely, and see that New Yorkers are still very much alive and appreciative of art, of music.
It's been more than a year since the pandemic forced the city's theatres to close and Broadway went dark. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. New York is planning to ease restrictions on public gatherings in April, and there are plans for more venues here to gradually join the festival. It's hoped all theatres could reopen with a limited seating capacity at the end of May. The organiser says the pop-up shows are aimed at preparing the public and performers for when that happens.
Art and performance in particular I think is so powerful in reminding us what it is to be in community with each other. And I think that's what we most urgently need. And this is serving that purpose. And it's also trying to get as many New York artists back on their feet in front of audiences and being paid for it.
Dancer and choreographer Ayodele Cassell also took part in the festival and says now is a crucial time for the city to invest in arts projects.
I want institutions and organizations to really take risks with the funding that they're getting and to engage artists like immediately. I hope that this is the beginning of appreciation for all artists. We are essential. And also, it can't hurt to have more tap dancing everywhere.
The hope is that by the summer, enough people will be vaccinated in New York to hold large-scale performances, and that arts and culture will reawaken the city that never sleeps.
From King Kong climbing the Empire State Building to breakfast at Tiffany's, New York's enjoyed an intimate relationship with the film industry for decades. After a year apart, the city's residents are now permitted to rekindle a connection with the silver screen.
I've done like 5 tests, and all of them are negative. I had the vaccine, so I would definitely go.
I wouldn't mind going at all. I usually sit a couple seats away from anybody anyway.
I feel good about it as long as, there's enough space between everybody and it's not jam-packed.
New York state guidelines are in place to ensure cinemas won't be jam-packed. A 25% limit on capacity is one of the COVID-19 safety precautions movie theatres must follow. Food and drinks are permitted, but the IFC Centre in downtown Manhattan has kept snacks off the menu for the time being to ensure that masks are worn at all times.
There'll be a little bit more revenue coming in as we get further along from more and more people coming back, and at some point in the not too distant future we'll add concessions again. But 25% capacity is a lot better than 0, which is where we were stuck for a year.
Los Angeles is the star of the US film industry, but New York is certainly the most prominent supporting actor. According to media analytics firm Comscore, ticket sales in New York account for 7.4% of the total US domestic movie box office.
Cinemas in the city have reopened, but over the past year, many movie fans have grown accustomed to watching films at home. Getting people up off the couch may be a lasting battle for theatres.
Before the COVID-19 pandemic, cinemas enjoyed a 90-day exclusivity window before films became available on TV streaming devices. But those rules have softened over the past year. All Warner Brothers films released this year are launching in theatres and simultaneously on the HBO Max streaming platform in the US.
That is obviously a very big concern. Having said that, I think not unlike other industries, you have, I would say, a lot of pent-up demand, and theatres are still a destination.
Analysts warn that lingering coronavirus concerns could dampen demand for a considerable period. But cinema operators are confident that the unique movie-going experience will ensure their story can have a happy ending.
This year's Academy Awards will be held in person despite the coronavirus pandemic. Now, here's a plot twist. Only nominees, their guests, and presenters will be allowed to enter the event venue in Los Angeles.
An Oscars like no other, a new outdoor location, testing and quarantine rules, and much less activity on the red carpet than in years past. In a town used to big productions, the Academy is hoping to pull off one more at the 93rd Academy Awards.
I think they're also not going to pretend that there's not a pandemic happening. Like, yes, it's going to look different. They said it's going to look like a movie. We're not really sure what that means yet. We have no traditional hosts, and we have multiple hubs. One's going to be a train station. Union Station in Los Angeles, where the nominees will be gathered. Musical performances will be done at the Dolby Theater, where the ceremony is traditionally held.
2 months delayed already. It's supposed to be an in-person affair with no Zoom acceptance speeches. There are plans, though, for satellite locations in London and Paris. Organizers are hoping to buck the trend of virtual awards shows like the Grammys and Golden Globes, which took big ratings hits this year.
And I think they have this get out of jail free card. And that means, you know, if you do something weird and it works, great, you're a hero. And if it doesn't, you get to be like, well, it was a pandemic. And then you move on from it. It's probably a good place to be.
For the Academy, the unique situation presents new challenges.
It is very complicated because, first of all, and I completely understand, the Academy is keeping the protocols and the directions and everything very, very low key and very, very just within the people that they need to deal with. So nominees only are getting these kinds of emails.
The Oscars will have an on-site COVID safety team, and attendees are required to take 3 coronavirus tests the week before. Los Angeles County has granted essential worker status to the people attending the Oscars, which this year is just the nominees, their guests, and around 15 A-list presenters. That allows them to avoid some quarantine requirements. Despite the efforts, industry insiders say things just aren't quite the same.
I just think it's wonderful that the Academy is making a live show. I think it shows, in my opinion, it really shows that movies are alive and well and we're coming back. The sad thing is that for nominees this year, they won't get all the bells and whistles that nominees usually get. There are no en-pass events, there are no cocktail parties, there are no extra events and fun. And that's the shame of it, I think.
Many experts think the lack of that usual fanfare will have an impact on who wins as well.
I assume that Academy voters are texting each other, Zoom calling each other, but what you have are Zoom events that are quite, torturous to sit through sometimes. So you don't have people going to parties, you don't have people drinking, you don't have people chatting about films, so you don't have that organic conversation. What you do now have are people paying attention to critics awards, people paying attention to guilds and things like that more so than they probably ever have before.
You are one of those lucky people that can travel.
With many movie theaters closed for the past year, most of the films are already available for people to stream from home. Even without quite as much star power, the industry is hoping to make these pandemic Oscars a surprise hit. Another breakthrough for Asians on Hollywood's biggest night. After last year's Best Picture win for the Korean film Parasite, this year, Korean-American Lee Isaac Chung's movie Minari has racked up 6 nominations.
So that's quite significant because it's not just that it's an Asian film. I mean, East Asia has positioned itself as a powerhouse of content, of great stories, but this is an American movie.
The film's lead, Steven Yeun, is the first Asian American ever nominated for Best Actor. And Chinese director Chloe Zhao has a chance to take home multiple statuettes for her film Nomadland.
I'm just houseless. Not the same thing.
The story of American drifters has been the big winner so far of this awards season.
Chloe Zhao is really unique, and she's doing something that I think we all aspire to do, which is just tell stories regardless of where you came from and what your background is.
Despite the Oscars recognition, Asians working in the industry, though, say they still face barriers.
A lot of Asian American filmmakers are trying to emulate and just tell stories, whereas the industry as a whole looks more towards a socially, biased perspective of is this an Asian film or is this an Asian American film?
And Oscar-nominated films are usually geared towards a different audience than the big Hollywood blockbusters that traditionally dominate at the box office.
To get more Asian faces in a much wider mainstream medium kind of presence, I think that's when bigger changes are going to come about. But I do think this is a good step forward.
And in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic, the climate for Asian Americans has become increasingly tense. This year's Oscars comes amidst a nationwide surge in violence and hate crimes against Asians. In response, Stop Asian Hate rallies have been held throughout the country, and the issue is almost certain to come up during this year's awards ceremony. Some non-Asian celebrities, like the musician Rihanna, have lent support to the cause, but there are still calls for more solidarity.
You really sense this hyper-tribalization of the culture, and that is not so great. I think, and I really hope that black actors should speak out in favor of their Asian mothers. We all live in the same country. We have to live with each other, at least coexist. So that I find disappointing. I don't think there's enough of it. I think black people and white people and Latinos should also speak out.
Well, the Oscars alone won't fix the problem. They can help highlight the depth of Asian experiences and contributions in the U.S.
So I think with these two people nominated for the Oscars this year, it helps us deconstruct that idea of a monolithic Asia and the ignorance and the violence that it leads to.
A reminder that Asians are an important part of the American story.
What a beautiful